For 40 years, I trained bank employees to spot scammers. Every new hire at First Minnesota Savings spent their first week with me. I taught them the warning signs, the isolation tactics, the way a con artist earns your trust before draining your accounts. I showed them case studies, real-life examples, step-by-step breakdowns of how good people lose everything to bad actors. I was the best in the business, regional fraud prevention specialist. I put together the training manual that's still used in banks across the Midwest. I personally caught over 100 fraudsters during my career. Identity thieves, check forgers, elder abuse scammers. I thought I'd seen every trick in the book. Turns out I hadn't. Because the most dangerous scammer I ever encountered didn't call me from a foreign country, didn't send a phishing email, didn't pretend to be a Nigerian prince or an IRS agent. She showed up at my wife's funeral with a casserole and a smile. My niece, Brenda, my late brother Frank's daughter, the woman who moved into my home to help me grieve and spent the next 14 months stealing everything she could get her hands on. $70,000, forged checks, credit cards in my name, and a plan to put me in a nursing home and take my house. She thought I was just a heartbroken old man who'd never notice. She forgot what I did for a living. My name is George Edward Brennan. I'm 73 years old, and this is the story of how I caught the con artist in my own home and made her pay for every dollar she stole. But before I tell you about Brenda, I need to tell you about Marilyn, because none of this makes sense without understanding what I lost, what she meant to me, why I became so vulnerable in the first place. I met Marilyn at a church dance in September of 1975. I was 23 years old, working as a teller at First Minnesota Savings, earning barely enough to pay rent on my one-bedroom apartment. She was 21, in nursing school, wearing a blue dress that matched her eyes. I asked her to dance 3 times that night. She said yes, every time. We got married the following June. Small ceremony, 40 guests. Her mother made the cake. I wore my father's suit because I couldn't afford a new one. 48 years we were married. 48 years of building a life together. We bought our house in 1982, little 3-bedroom colonial in Maple Grove, just outside Minneapolis. Susan was born in 78, David in 81. We raised them in that house, celebrated every birthday, every Christmas, every anniversary within those walls. Marilyn planted roses in the backyard the first spring we moved in. Red ones, like the bouquet I gave her on our first anniversary. She tended those roses for over 40 years. Even when her arthritis got bad, she'd be out there with her gloves and her pruning shears, talking to them like they were children. "George," she'd say, "flowers need love just like people do. You can't just ignore them and expect them to bloom." She was like that about everything, always caring, always nurturing. She spent 30 years as a nurse at Hennepin County Medical Center, held hands with dying patients, comforted grieving families, came home exhausted but never complained. I was the lucky one. Everyone said so. George Brennan married up, my friends used to joke. They were right. Marilyn died on a Tuesday morning, April 8, 2024, 18 months ago now. I found her on the kitchen floor. She'd gotten up early, the way she always did. I heard her moving around downstairs, heard the coffee maker start. I was still in bed, half asleep, thinking I'd get up in a few minutes and join her. Then I heard the sound, a thump, heavy, wrong. I found her next to the refrigerator. She was still breathing, but barely. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't seeing me. I called 911, held her hand, told her I loved her over and over, like if I said it enough times, she'd come back to me. The paramedics said it was massive heart failure, nothing anyone could have done. She died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, the same hospital where she'd worked for 30 years. I didn't get to say goodbye. After Marilyn died, I stopped caring about anything. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the truth. For 48 years, she was the center of everything. She handled the social calendar. She reminded me about birthdays and anniversaries. She made sure we called the kids every Sunday. She kept the house running, the bills organized, the garden alive. Without her, I just floated. The bills piled up on the kitchen counter. I ate frozen dinners because I didn't know how to cook anything else. The phone would ring and I wouldn't answer it. Susan called, David called. I'd talk to them for a few minutes, then make excuses. I couldn't explain the emptiness to them, couldn't put words to the hole she'd left. I just sat in my chair, day after day, staring at the wall, waiting for something that was never going to come. That's the state I was in when Brenda showed up. Now I need to tell you about my brother Frank. Frank was 3 years older than me. We weren't close growing up. He was the wild one. I was the responsible one. He got into trouble. I got good grades. He drifted from job to job. I built a career. Different paths, different lives. But he was still my brother. And when he died 15 years ago, liver failure, too much drinking, I mourned him, helped pay for the funeral, tried to stay in touch with his daughter, Brenda. Tried being the key word. Brenda was always difficult. Married 3 times by the time she was 35. Constant money problems. Always some crisis, some drama, some reason she needed help. Frank used to worry about her. I remember the last real conversation we had, about a year before he died.
"Watch out for Brenda, Georgie," he said. We were sitting on his back porch, drinking beers. His hands were shaking. The disease was already taking hold. "I love my daughter, but she's got a hole in her soul that money won't fill. Don't let her pull you into her messes." I promised I'd be careful. And for 15 years, I was. I kept Brenda at arm's length, sent a card at Christmas, made small talk at family gatherings, but nothing more. I didn't give her money when she asked, didn't co-sign loans, didn't get involved. But then Marilyn died, and everything changed. Brenda showed up at the funeral. I hadn't expected to see her. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. But there she was, in a black dress, tears streaming down her face. She hugged me for a long time, told me how sorry she was, told me Marilyn had been like a mother to her, told me she couldn't imagine what I was going through. And then she made an offer. "Uncle George, you shouldn't be alone right now. Let me stay for a few days. I can help with the arrangements, cook some meals, make sure you're okay." I should have said no, should have remembered Frank's warning, should have recognized the pattern, the sudden concern, the eager helpfulness, the calculated kindness. But I was broken, empty. The thought of going back to that house alone, with Marilyn's chair sitting empty by the window, her roses blooming for no one. "Okay," I said, "just for a few days." Those few days turned into a week. The week turned into a month. The month turned into a year. And somewhere along the way, Brenda stopped being a guest and started being something else entirely. At first, it seemed like a blessing. She cooked dinner every night, real food, not frozen dinners. She cleaned the house, did the laundry, made sure I was eating. She sat with me on the porch in the evenings and listened while I talked about Marilyn. She seemed genuinely interested, genuinely caring. "Let me handle the mail, Uncle George. You don't need to worry about bills right now. Let me answer the phone. You should rest. Let me take you to your doctor's appointment. I don't want you driving when you're tired." It felt nice to have someone there, to have someone taking care of things. I was so tired, so sad, so empty. I didn't have the energy to argue. But here's the thing about isolation. It happens slowly. So slowly, you don't even notice it.
The mail came, and Brenda grabbed it before I could see it. The phone rang, and Brenda answered it while I was in the other room. Susan called one day, and I heard Brenda say, "He's sleeping right now. Can he call you back?" I wasn't sleeping. I was sitting right there. But I didn't say anything, didn't question it, didn't push back. Because I was lost, and Brenda knew it. About 6 months into her stay, Susan started calling less often. When she did call, the conversations were strange, stilted. She sounded worried, but also distant, like she was being careful about what she said. "Dad, are you okay? Brenda said you haven't been feeling well." "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired." "She said you didn't want to talk last time I called, that you were upset with us for not visiting more." That wasn't true. I hadn't said that, but I was too foggy to process it, too tired to argue. I just said, "I'm fine, don't worry about me." David tried to visit about 8 months ago, drove all the way from Seattle, but when he got to the house, Brenda met him at the door. "He's not well today. It might upset him to have visitors. Can you come back tomorrow?" David came back the next day. Brenda said I was at a doctor's appointment. He waited for 3 hours, but I never showed up. I found out later that I wasn't at any doctor's appointment. Brenda had taken me to the grocery store, driven the long way, killed time until David gave up and left. My own son turned away from my door, and I didn't even know. But I'm getting ahead of myself, because it took me months to realize what was really happening, months to see what Brenda was doing behind my back. It wasn't until I finally woke up, really woke up, that I understood. She wasn't taking care of me. She was taking everything. And she was going to keep taking until there was nothing left. But what she didn't know, what she never considered, was that the confused old man in the armchair used to be the best fraud investigator in the state. And once I opened my eyes, she didn't stand a chance. It was Marilyn's birthday that finally woke me up. November 4th, 2024. She would have been 72. I woke up that morning feeling different, clearer, like the fog that had been wrapped around my brain for over a year was finally starting to lift. I lay in bed and looked at the ceiling, and for the first time in months, I had a thought that felt like my own. I wanted to visit her grave, bring flowers, red roses like the ones she loved. I got dressed, walked downstairs. Brenda was in the kitchen making breakfast. "Uncle George, you're up early. Sit down, I'll make you some eggs." "Actually, Brenda, I'd like to go out this morning, visit Marilyn's grave. It's her birthday." Something flickered across Brenda's face, just for a second. Then the smile came back. "Oh, Uncle George, that's sweet. But the car's in the shop, remember? I took it in yesterday. I can drive you tomorrow, maybe." The car was in the shop. I didn't remember that, but I'd stopped questioning things like that. "I'll take a cab," I said. The smile disappeared. "You don't need to do that. It's cold outside. You might get sick. I'll take care of the flowers. I can bring them to the grave for you." "I want to go myself." "Uncle George," her voice changed, harder now, less sweet. "You really shouldn't be going out alone. The doctor said." "What doctor?" She paused, just for a beat. "The doctor I took you to last month. Don't you remember? He said you needed to rest, that stress wasn't good for you." I didn't remember any doctor's appointment, but more than that, I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. The caring niece was gone. In her place was someone I hadn't seen before. Someone who didn't like being questioned. "Never mind," I said. "I'll wait until the car is back." I sat down at the kitchen table, ate the eggs she put in front of me, didn't say another word. But for the first time in 14 months, I was paying attention. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. The mail came at 10:30 every morning, and every morning, Brenda was at the mailbox before I could get there. She'd sort through it in the kitchen, then put my pile on the counter. But the pile was always small, Junk mail, advertisements, never anything from the bank, never any statements. I asked about it once. "Brenda, have you seen my bank statements? I haven't looked at them in a while." "Oh, I switched you to paperless, Uncle George. Remember? It's easier that way. I can print them out if you want." She never printed them out. The phone was worse. It would ring, and Brenda would answer before the second ring. I'd hear her talking in the other room, her voice low. Then she'd come back and say something like, "telemarketer," or "wrong number." One afternoon, I picked up the extension in the bedroom while she was on the main line. "Don't think it's a good idea for you to visit right now. He's been very agitated. The doctor thinks stress could cause another episode." It was Susan, my daughter, asking about me. "What kind of episode?" Susan asked. "He's been confused, wandering at night. Sometimes he doesn't recognize me. It's heartbreaking, honestly." I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to my niece tell my daughter that I was losing my mind. None of it was true, not a word. I hung up quietly, went back to my chair, said nothing. But now I knew. The following Tuesday, Brenda went grocery shopping. I waited until I heard her car leave the driveway. Then I went to work. My filing cabinet was in the spare bedroom. I hadn't touched it since Marilyn died. She was always the one who handled the paperwork. But the cabinet was still there, and so were my records, or what was left of them. The first thing I noticed was the bank statements. They'd been moved, not where I usually kept them. I pulled them out and started reading. My savings account had held $247,000 when Marilyn died. That was our nest egg. 40 years of saving, investing, being careful. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. The balance now? $198,000. $47,000 gone. I went through the statements line by line. 17 withdrawals over 14 months. Some for $2,000, some for $5,000, one for $8,000, all made in person at the branch.
All with my signature on the withdrawal slip, except I hadn't signed them. I pulled out a magnifying glass and examined the signatures. They were close, practiced, but I'd spent 40 years analyzing handwriting. The pressure was wrong, the slant was off, the loop on the G wasn't mine. My niece had forged my signature 17 times. But that wasn't all. I kept digging, found credit card statements I'd never seen before. 3 cards, all opened in my name over the past year. Total balance, $23,000. The charges were itemized. Furniture from Pottery Barn. I've never bought anything from Pottery Barn in my life. Jewelry from Zales, designer handbags, airline tickets to Cancun. Brenda had taken a vacation on my credit. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by statements and records, my hands shaking. 40 years of catching fraudsters, 40 years of teaching people how to spot scams, and my own niece had been stealing from me for over a year. But that wasn't the worst part. At the back of the filing cabinet, I found a folder I'd never seen before. Manila, unlabeled. I almost missed it. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Estate papers, beneficiary designation forms, a draft of a new will, one I'd never seen, never signed. All of them naming Brenda Walsh as sole beneficiary of my estate. And underneath those, a petition for conservatorship, an application to have me declared mentally incompetent. Notes in Brenda's handwriting about doctors who specialize in elderly cognition issues. A printout from the county court website about guardianship procedures. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was planning to take everything. The house, the savings, the car, everything Marilyn and I had built over 48 years. And she was going to lock me in a nursing home while she did it. I sat there for a long time. The house was silent.
The clock on the wall ticked, and I felt something I hadn't felt since Marilyn died: rage. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. I didn't tell Brenda, just took the spare key to her car while she was napping and left. She'd be furious when she found out. I didn't care. Marilyn's grave was on a small hill under an oak tree. The headstone was simple, just her name, the dates, and the words she'd chosen herself years ago. She loved deeply. I knelt on the grass. I let you down, Marilyn. The November wind was cold. Brown leaves scattered across the ground. She got me, your niece. She came into our home, ate our food, slept in our guest room. And the whole time, she was stealing everything. Forging checks, running up credit cards, planning to have me put away. My voice cracked. 40 years catching con artists. 40 years teaching people how to spot fraud. And I fell for the oldest trick in the book. A pretty face and a sad story. I wiped my eyes. I was so lost without you, Marilyn, so broken. I stopped paying attention to anything. And she knew. She saw me at that funeral, saw how broken I was, and she moved in for the kill. I touched the cold granite of her headstone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for the cold to seep into my bones. Long enough for the tears to dry on my cheeks. And then I remembered something Marilyn said to me once. It was years ago, after I'd caught a particularly nasty fraudster who'd been targeting widows. I came home angry, frustrated that people could be so cruel. Marilyn looked at me and smiled. George Brennan, you caught more con artists than anyone at that bank. You wrote the book on fraud prevention. Don't you dare let anyone take what we built. You hear me? I heard her. I stood up slowly, knees aching, heart still heavy. But something had shifted. The grief was still there. The guilt was still there. But underneath it, for the first time in 18 months, was something else. Determination. You're right, sweetheart, I said to the headstone. You're always right. The next morning, I called Henry Cho. Henry was my partner at First Minnesota for 15 years. Best fraud investigator I ever worked with. We'd retired the same year, stayed in touch. I'd been meaning to call him for months, but never had the energy. Now, I had the energy. Henry, I need your help. I told him everything. The forged signatures, the credit cards, the estate documents, the conservatorship petition, all of it. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Georgie, he finally said, this is textbook elder financial abuse. I've seen it 100 times, but I never thought I'd see it happen to you. Neither did I. What do you need? I need help documenting everything, pulling records, building a case, the way we used to do. You want to trap her. I want to bury her. I could hear Henry smile through the phone. I'll be there in an hour. Henry brought his laptop and his expertise. We spent the next 2 days going through everything. The forged withdrawal slips were amateur hour. We photographed each one, compared them to genuine signatures, documented the inconsistencies. The credit card fraud was even easier. Brenda had used her own email address when applying for the cards, her own phone number, like she never expected anyone to check. But the isolation was what made me angriest. Henry helped me pull phone records, call logs. Brenda had been intercepting calls from Susan and David for months, screening them, giving excuses. He's resting. He's at the doctor. He's not feeling well today. And when my children did get through, Brenda had been poisoning them. He's declining rapidly. He has good days and bad days, but mostly bad. The doctor thinks it might be early dementia.
He's been hostile, confused. I think he needs space. She'd been telling my own children that I was losing my mind, that I didn't want to see them, that they should stay away. And they believed her. Because why would they doubt their cousin? Why would they question family? I'd lost 18 months with my children. 18 months I'd never get back. Because of her. I called Susan from Henry's phone. Brenda didn't have the number. Susan answered on the first ring. "Hello? Sweetheart, it's Dad." Silence. Then, "Dad? Oh my God! Dad, are you okay? Brenda said you didn't want to talk. She said you were angry at us for not visiting. She said—" None of it was true, Susan. My voice was steady now, clear. Not a single word. I heard her start to cry. "Daddy, I thought I was losing you. I thought you hated us. I called and called, but she always had an excuse. And David tried to visit, but she said—" "I know, sweetheart, I know. But I need you to listen to me now. Can you do that?" "Yes, yes, of course." "Brenda has been stealing from me, forging checks, opening credit cards. She's trying to have me declare incompetent so she can take everything. The house, the money, all of it." More silence. Then Susan's voice, hard as steel. "I'm on the next flight." Susan arrived Thursday. David drove down from Seattle, 17 hours straight, barely stopped. We met at Henry's house, all of us together, for the first time in almost 2 years. I hugged my daughter, my son, held them tight. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there, that I let her get between us." "It's not your fault, Dad." David's voice was thick. "She manipulated all of us. That's what con artists do." That evening, we met with Rachel Goldstein, elder law attorney, sharp as a tack. Henry recommended her. She reviewed everything: the forged checks, the credit cards, the estate documents, the conservatorship petition. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "you have an airtight case. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. These are felonies in Minnesota. What about the conservatorship?" She never filed it, probably waiting until she had more control. But the fact that she drafted it, combined with everything else, Rachel shook her head. She was weeks away from taking legal control of your life. A few more months, and you would have been in a facility wondering what happened. Susan grabbed my hand. "What do we do now?" David asked. Rachel smiled slightly. "Now we set a trap, and we let Miss Walsh walk right into it." Here's what we planned. I'd go home, act normal, let Brenda think nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Susan and David would stay at a hotel nearby. Rachel would contact the police and the county prosecutor. They'd start building a criminal case. And I would install a hidden camera in my living room.
Minnesota is a one-party consent state. As long as I consented to the recording, it was legal. And I wanted Brenda on tape. I wanted her admitting what she'd done. "Get her talking," Rachel said. "Show her the statements. Let her panic. People say things when they panic." I nodded. "One more thing," I said. "I want to be the one who confronts her, not the police. Me." Susan started to object, but I held up my hand. She came to my wife's funeral and pretended to care. She moved into my home and treated me like a mark. She tried to take everything Marilyn and I built. I looked at my children. I spent 40 years catching people like her. I want to be the one who brings her down. David looked at me for a long moment. "Then we'll be right behind you, Dad, the whole way." I drove home that night. Brenda was waiting at the kitchen table, arms crossed. "Where have you been, Uncle George? I was worried sick." I put on my best confused expression. "Just driving, needed some air. I'm sorry if I worried you." Her face softened, the mask back in place. "It's okay. Just tell me next time, okay? You know I worry about you." I nodded, went to my room, closed the door. Through the window, I could see Marilyn's roses. Brown now,
dormant for winter, but still there, still rooted. In the spring, they'd bloom again. And by then, Brenda would be gone. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I went back to playing the role of the confused old man, shuffling around the house, asking Brenda the same questions twice, pretending not to remember things. It wasn't hard. I'd been doing it for real for over a year. The only difference now was that I was watching, paying attention, documenting. The hidden camera was in the living room, tucked behind a picture frame on the bookshelf. Henry had set it up while Brenda was out getting groceries. It recorded everything, audio and video, straight to a secure cloud server. Every evening, I'd review the footage on Henry's laptop, watch Brenda go through my mail, listen to her talk on the phone in hushed tones, see her rifle through my filing cabinet when she thought I was asleep. She was getting bolder, less careful, probably thought she was in the final stretch. She had no idea what was coming. Sunday, November 17th, 2025. I woke up early, made my own coffee for the first time in months, sat at the kitchen table and waited. At 8:15, I sent a text to Susan, ready. At 8:30, I called Rachel Goldstein and confirmed everything was in place. At 8:45, I pulled out the folder Henry and I had prepared. Bank statements, credit card records, photos of forged signatures, copies of the estate documents Brenda had hidden in my filing cabinet. I spread them across the kitchen table, and I waited. Brenda came downstairs at 9 o'clock, still in her bathrobe, expecting her usual Sunday morning. She stopped in the doorway. "Uncle George, what are you doing up so early?" "Sit down, Brenda."
Something in my voice made her pause. I wasn't shuffling, wasn't confused, wasn't the tired old man she'd been manipulating for 14 months. "What's all this?" She gestured at the papers on the table, trying to keep her voice light. "Are you going through old paperwork? I can help you organize." "Sit down." She sat. I picked up the first bank statement. My savings account, January of this year, balance $226,000. Look at the withdrawal on the 15th, $5,000. My signature. I slid it across to her. "Except it's not my signature, is it, Brenda?" Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. She was good, I'll give her that. "Uncle George, I don't know what you're talking about. You signed that yourself. Don't you remember? We went to the bank together." "We didn't go anywhere together, Brenda. I checked. The security footage from the bank shows you, alone, at the teller window with a withdrawal slip you forged." I pulled out the next document and the next and the next. 17 withdrawals, 14 months, $47,000. I looked at her. All of it taken from an account my wife and I spent 40 years building. Brenda's mask was cracking now. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew, whether she could still talk her way out of this. "Uncle George, you're confused. This is exactly what I was worried about, your memory." "My memory is fine." I pulled out the credit card statements. 3 cards, opened in my name, using my Social Security number. $23,000 in charges, furniture, jewelry, a vacation to Cancun. I tapped the paper. "I've never been to Cancun, Brenda, but you have, last March. I found the photos on your phone." Her eyes darted toward the door. "Don't bother," I said. "We're not done." I reached for the last folder, the one that had made my blood run cold. "You want to explain this?" I spread the estate documents across the table. The forged will, the beneficiary forms, the conservatorship petition. You were going to have me declared incompetent, lock me in a nursing home, take my house, take everything. I leaned forward, and you thought I'd never notice.
You thought I was just a senile old man who couldn't tell what was happening in his own home? For a long moment, Brenda didn't say anything. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. You know what, Uncle George? You're right. She leaned back in her chair, all pretense gone. I thought you were too far gone to figure it out, and honestly, you almost were. If you hadn't waken up when you did, she shrugged. Another few months and it would have been done. The conservatorship would have gone through. The house would be in my name, and you'd be in some state-run facility drooling into your oatmeal. I stared at her. My brother's daughter. My own blood. Why? I asked. We're family. I would have helped you if you'd asked.
Helped me? Brenda's voice turned bitter. Like you helped my dad? You let him drink himself to death while you sat in your nice house with your nice wife and your nice retirement fund. You never gave us anything. Not really. Just Christmas cards and empty promises. That's not true. It is true. You had everything, Uncle George, and my dad had nothing. I had nothing. She gestured at the papers on the table. This was just evening the score. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "You done?" She blinked. "Because I've been recording this entire conversation." Her face went white. "There's a camera behind that picture frame, audio and video. Everything you just said, the confession, the justification, all of it, is now on a server that my attorney controls." I smiled, not a kind smile. I spent 40 years training bank employees to catch con artists. I wrote the manual on fraud prevention. Did you really think you could steal from me and get away with it? Brenda stood up so fast her chair fell over. "You can't do this. That recording isn't legal. I didn't consent." "Minnesota is a one-party consent state. I consented. That's all that's required." I stood up too. "And speaking of consent, you might want to get a lawyer." The doorbell rang. Susan walked in first. Behind her was David, and behind David were 2 police officers from the Maple Grove Police Department. And behind them, carrying a leather briefcase, was Rachel Goldstein. Brenda backed up against the kitchen counter. "This is insane! You can't just—" "Brenda Walsh?" One of the officers stepped forward. "I'm Officer Martinez. You're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." "What? No, this is a family matter. Uncle George is confused. He doesn't know what he's—" "Ma'am, we have bank records, forged documents, and a video confession. You have the right to remain silent." Brenda tried to run, actually tried to push past David and get to the back door. David didn't move. He's a big man, software engineer, but he played football in college. He just stood there, blocking the exit, arms crossed. "Going somewhere, Brenda?" The officers took her by the arms, read her rights, started walking her toward the front door. And that's when she turned to me one last time. "Uncle George, please." Her voice had changed again, desperate now, pleading. "I'm family. I made mistakes, but I'm your family, your brother's daughter. Please don't do this. Please." I looked at her for a long moment. The woman who came to my wife's funeral with a casserole and a smile, who moved into my home pretending to help, who stole my money, forged my signature, isolated me from my children, who was going to put me in a facility and take everything Marilyn and I had built. "You stopped being family," I said, "the day you decided I was just an ATM with a heartbeat." I turned my back on her. The last thing I heard was the front door closing, then a car engine starting, then silence. Susan was crying. She threw her arms around me and held on tight. David joined us a moment later. The 3 of us standing in my kitchen, holding each other for the first time in almost 2 years. "Dad, I'm so sorry." Susan's voice was muffled against my shoulder. "I should have known something was wrong. I should have pushed harder. I should have—" It's not your fault, sweetheart. She fooled all of us. That's what con artists do. David pulled back and looked at me. His eyes were red. How did we not see it? Because you trusted her. Because she's family. I shook my head. I spent 40 years catching fraudsters, and I didn't see it either. Not until it was almost too late. Rachel Goldstein cleared her throat. Mr. Brennan, the officers will process her at the station. Given the evidence, she's looking at multiple felony charges. The prosecutor will be in touch tomorrow to discuss the case. What's she facing? Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, identity theft for the credit cards. Rachel paused. In Minnesota, that's potentially 10 to 15 years. Given the amount stolen and the premeditation involved, I'd expect her to serve at least 5. 5 years. It wasn't enough. Not for what she'd done. But it was something. What about the money? David asked. Asset forfeiture is already in process. We've frozen her accounts. Found about $18,000 in a savings account in her name. That'll be returned to your father. The rest? Rachel shook her head. She spent it. The vacation, the furniture, the jewelry, it's gone. I nodded slowly. I'd expected that. The house? The forged estate documents have been voided. The conservatorship petition was never filed, so there's nothing to contest. Everything remains in your name, Mr. Brennan. She smiled slightly. She didn't get the house, and she never will. I looked around my kitchen. The same kitchen where Marilyn used to make breakfast. The same kitchen where I'd found her on the floor that terrible morning. Still mine. Still home. Thank you, Rachel, for everything. That was 6 months ago. Brenda is awaiting trial. Her public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal. 5 years, early parole possible. The prosecutor rejected it. They're pushing for the maximum. I don't attend the hearings. I've said everything I need to say. The money that was recovered, the $18,000 from Brenda's account, went into a fund for my grandchildren's education. Susan has 2 teenagers now. I want them to have what Marilyn and I had: options, opportunities, a fair start. The credit card companies investigated and determined the accounts were fraudulently opened. They wiped the debt. It took some fighting, but Henry helped me navigate the paperwork. 40 years of banking experience, finally useful for something personal. Susan visits every month now.
She flies in from Denver on Friday evening, stays until Sunday afternoon. We cook together, watch old movies. Sometimes we just sit on the porch and talk about nothing. David came for Thanksgiving last month, first time in 3 years. He brought a woman he's been seeing, a nice lady named Patricia who works in tech like him. She laughed at my jokes and complimented Marilyn's roses, even though they were dormant for winter. They'll bloom again in spring, I told her. They always do. Last Sunday, Susan and I were sitting on the porch, evening sun, coffee in hand, the same porch where Marilyn and I used to watch the sunset. "You know, Dad," Susan said, "Mom would be proud of you." I looked at her. For catching Brenda? For not giving up, for fighting back, for remembering who you are. I thought about that. For 14 months, I wasn't George Brennan. I was just a shell, an empty man in an empty house, waiting for something that was never going to come. But Marilyn's voice was still in my head, still pushing me, still refusing to let me surrender. "Your mother always did know how to kick me in the pants when I needed it," I said. Susan laughed. It was the best sound I'd heard in years. If you're watching this and someone in your life is controlling your phone calls, your mail, your visitors, I need you to hear something. That's not help. That's isolation. And isolation is the first step to losing everything. I spent 40 years teaching people how to spot fraud, how to recognize the warning signs, how to protect themselves from con artists. And I still fell for it. Because she was family, because I was grieving, because I stopped paying attention. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your gut. Call your family.
Call them from a different phone if you have to. Document everything. And don't be embarrassed to ask for help. I almost lost my home, my savings, my children. I almost lost everything because I was too proud to admit I was vulnerable. Don't make the same mistake. If you've experienced something like this, a caregiver who became a predator, a family member who took advantage of your grief, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Sometimes it helps just knowing you're not alone. And if you know an elderly person who's suddenly become unavailable, or too tired for visitors, or angry at the family, check on them, really check on them, because that's how it starts. I share stories like this every week here on John's Revenge Stories, real people who fought back when everyone counted them out. If this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss the next one. And if you think Brenda got exactly what she deserved, hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Take care of yourselves, friends.
And remember, the most dangerous con artists don't call from overseas. Sometimes they show up at your door with a casserole and a smile. Be careful who you let in. I'll see you in the next one.